Have you ever found yourself in a relentless current, battling to keep others afloat, only to feel your own strength wane? Your feet lose purchase on the riverbed, and your breath grow shallow? It is a pervasive modern malady, this silent self-sacrifice, where the boundless giving of one's spirit to nurture the lives of others often leaves a barren landscape within. We champion the altruist, the pillar of strength, the unwavering support, yet rarely pause to consider the toll such unwavering resilience exacts on the soul that bears it. The man who stays strong for everyone but forgets himself is not a mythical figure. He walks among us, his quiet struggles often masked by an impenetrable veneer of capability. He is the friend who always listens, the son who carries the weight of his family's expectations, the partner who absorbs every tremor of anxiety from his beloved. His strength is a beacon for others, but in its unwavering luminescence, his own inner world often fades into shadow. This narrative explores the intricate tapestry of such a life, delving into the psychological underpinnings of this self-abandonment, tracing the subtle threads that bind a man to the perpetual service of others, even at the cost of his own essence. Elias was a man forged in the crucible of expectation. From a young age, he had been the steady hand, the calm voice, the unwavering presence. His mother, a woman prone to dramatic swings of emotion, had leaned on him heavily after his father's early departure. He remembered evenings spent tracing patterns on her tear-soaked cheeks, his small voice offering reassurances he barely understood. His younger sister, fragile and often ill, looked to him as a protector, a silent guardian against the perceived harshness of the world. Elias had absorbed these roles with an almost unconscious grace, his developing self-concept interwoven with the needs of those around him. He became the fixer, the solver, the one who never broke. The subtle reinforcement he received for his dependability, the sighs of relief when he took charge, the unburdening of others onto his capable shoulders, all served to solidify this identity. This pattern continued into his adult life, manifesting in his relationships, his career, and even his casual interactions. He worked as an architect, a profession that suited his meticulous nature and his innate desire to build and sustain. His clients trusted him implicitly, drawn to his quiet competence and his unwavering dedication. He would pore over blueprints late into the night, meticulously perfecting every detail, driven by a deep-seated need to deliver nothing less than excellence. His colleagues, admiring his work ethic, often offloaded their more challenging tasks onto him, knowing Elias would handle them without complaint. "Elias always delivers," they'd say, a casual phrase that carried the weight of an unspoken expectation. His personal life mirrored this dynamic. His partner, Sarah, a vibrant and artistic soul, often struggled with anxiety and self-doubt. Elias became her anchor, her sounding board, the one who could always offer a logical solution or a comforting word. He'd listen for hours to her fears about her art, her uncertainties about the future, her anxieties about their shared life. He would offer practical advice, gentle encouragement, and an unwavering belief in her abilities, even when she couldn't find it within herself. He absorbed her emotional storms, channeling them into a quiet strength that stabilized their shared world. Yet, as he was steadying her, he often felt an unfamiliar tremor within his own core, a low thrum of exhaustion he could never quite articulate. One evening, after a particularly draining week at work and a long night spent talking Sarah through an artistic crisis, Elias found himself staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror. His eyes, usually bright with a quiet intensity, seemed dulled, shadowed. A weariness settled deep within his bones, a profound fatigue that no amount of sleep seemed to alleviate. He saw the faint lines etched around his eyes, the slight slump in his shoulders. He was providing for everyone, supporting everyone, being strong for everyone. But for himself, the question hung in the quiet air of the bathroom, a stark and uncomfortable truth. He realized he hadn't picked up his own sketchbook in months. The intricate geometric patterns he once enjoyed drawing replaced by mental blueprints of other people's problems. His favorite hiking trails, once a source of solace and rejuvenation, remained untrodden. His own dreams, once vivid and ambitious, had faded into a hazy background, indistinguishable from the needs and desires of those he served. He remembered a fleeting moment from his childhood. He had been building an elaborate sandcastle on the beach, a magnificent fortress with turrets and moats. His sister, always a whirlwind of energy, had accidentally kicked it, sending sand and shells scattering. Elias, instead of reacting with anger or frustration, had immediately knelt, gathering the fallen sand, reassuring her that it was all right, that they could rebuild it. He had offered a smile, a comforting hand on her shoulder, while inside, a small, intricate part of him had crumbled with the sand. It was a familiar pattern, this prioritizing of others' emotional comfort over his own fleeting disappointment. The insidious nature of this self-neglect lies in its gradual unfolding. It isn't a sudden, cataclysmic event but a slow erosion, a subtle shifting of focus away from the self until one day, the reflection in the mirror reveals a stranger. Elias had become so adept at embodying the archetype of the reliable caretaker that he had lost touch with the individual who yearned for his own quiet moments of creation, his own adventurous escapades, his own space to simply be. He was perpetually in a state of performance, playing the role of the unshakable pillar, never allowing for a crack in the facade, never admitting to the weariness that gnawed at his spirit. The archetype embodied by Elias is often termed the Atlas figure, perpetually shouldering the burdens of others, a persona deeply rooted in the collective unconscious. This individual, often driven by an unexamined sense of duty or an unconscious desire for external validation, operates from a place of chronic self-abnegation. Drawing from Carl Jung's concept of the shadow, we see that Elias's undeveloped self, his unexpressed desires, and his neglected needs have receded into the shadow, manifesting as an almost imperceptible fatigue and a simmering discontent. His constant outward focus, while seemingly benevolent, is a form of ego projection, where his own internal emptiness is filled by the validation he receives from being indispensable to others. The solution for those who find themselves in Elias's shoes lies in a deliberate journey of individuation, a process of becoming one's true self, recognizing and integrating all aspects of personality, including the shadow. It requires a courageous turning inward, a conscious act of reclaiming the self that has been sacrificed. You, too, may recognize fragments of Elias in your own life. Perhaps you find yourself perpetually exhausted, giving more than you receive, your own needs consistently relegated to the periphery. It is imperative to understand that your capacity to genuinely support others is ultimately diminished when your own wellspring runs dry. Begin by acknowledging the weight you carry. What burdens are not truly yours? Where have you stepped in to fix what others should be resolving for themselves? This is not about selfishness, but about self-preservation, about honoring your own inherent worth. Practice conscious acts of self-care, not as a luxury, but as a necessity. Engage in activities that genuinely replenish your spirit, even if they seem small or insignificant at first. Set boundaries gently but firmly, understanding that no is a complete sentence. Remember, true strength lies not in never falling, but in knowing when to lean on others, when to ask for help, and most importantly, when to hold yourself in the gentle embrace of self-compassion. The world needs your light, but it needs your light burning brightly from a replenished source, not flickering from exhaustion. What small step will you take today to reclaim a piece of yourself? We've explored the quiet erosion of self, the subtle fading of individual essence when one becomes the unwavering support for everyone else. Yet, what happens when this selfless strength, this seemingly boundless well of resilience, finally meets its limits? What happens when the well runs dry, and the hero, accustomed to holding the world on his shoulders, finds himself buckling under a weight he can no longer bear alone? This is the crucial turning point, the moment of profound reckoning where the unspoken needs of the self demand recognition, often in ways that are disorienting and uncomfortable. It is in this crucible of exhaustion and disillusionment that the true nature of one's relational patterns and internal motivators is starkly revealed. The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. This profound observation from Carl Jung echoes through the corridors of Elias's being, reverberating with an unsettling truth. He had, for so long, attempted to wear the shoe of universal strength, believing it was the only way to navigate the complexities of his relationships and his own internal landscape. But the shoe, once seemingly comfortable, was now pinching, chafing, causing a deep ache that radiated through his very core. Elias had always prided himself on his unwavering composure, his ability to navigate any crisis with calm logic. He rarely raised his voice, never lost his temper, and was the embodiment of stoic resilience. Yet, lately, a new, unsettling sensation had begun to surface. A simmering irritability, a short fuse he couldn't explain, a misplaced file at work, a casual comment from Sarah about a minor household chore, even the mundane traffic on his commute. Each could trigger a disproportionate wave of annoyance. He'd find himself snapping, his words sharper than intended, followed by an immediate rush of guilt and confusion. This was not the Elias he knew, the Elias everyone else knew. He tried to suppress these unfamiliar feelings, to force himself back into the mold of the patient, understanding man he believed himself to be. He would take long walks, breathe deeply, and tell himself to be more tolerant, more understanding. But the irritation, like a persistent hum, remained just beneath the surface, a discordant note in the symphony of his meticulously composed life. It was a manifestation of his shadow, those repressed aspects of his personality that had been denied expression for so long. His unacknowledged needs for rest, for space, for emotional reciprocity, were now clamoring for attention, albeit in a distorted, uncomfortable form. One particularly demanding week, a major project at work hit unforeseen snags, requiring endless revisions and late nights. Concurrently, Sarah's art show deadline loomed, escalating her anxiety to new heights. Elias found himself caught in a relentless cycle of problem-solving and emotional support, his own well of energy rapidly depleting. He felt himself becoming increasingly withdrawn, his customary empathy replaced by a sense of detachment. He nodded, offered perfunctory advice, but his mind felt distant, his spirit utterly depleted. One evening, after another exhausting day, Sarah approached him, her voice trembling with concern about a last-minute change to her exhibition. "Elias, I just don't know what to do," she began, her eyes wide with worry. For a moment, Elias felt a familiar surge of the need to fix, to reassure. But then, an unexpected wave of something else washed over him, not anger, but an overwhelming weariness, a profound sense of enough. He felt a strange, almost physical repulsion from the very act of offering comfort. Instead of his usual soothing words, he heard himself say, in a voice that sounded oddly flat, "Sarah, I can't right now. I just can't." The words hung in the air, heavy and unfamiliar. Sarah looked at him, surprised, hurt evident in her eyes. It was a small crack in the dam, but for Elias it felt like a monumental fissure. He immediately regretted the abruptness, the perceived lack of care, but the exhaustion was too profound to entirely mask. It was a raw, unfiltered expression of his neglected self, the part that screamed for a reprieve. This unexpected outburst, this deviation from his carefully constructed persona, was a crucial, albeit painful, step in his journey. It signaled the breakdown of his established coping mechanisms, the very ones that had allowed him to function as the perpetual caretaker. He was experiencing what Erik Erikson might describe as a crisis in his generativity versus stagnation stage, where his focus on contributing to others had overshadowed his own need for personal growth and revitalization, leading to a sense of stagnation and inner emptiness. The constant self-sacrifice had led him to neglect the essential task of nurturing his own spirit and developing his inner resources. He started to notice the subtle cues in others, the ways in which they consistently leaned on him, often without offering reciprocal support. He saw how his calm demeanor had inadvertently created an environment where others felt free to offload their anxieties, assuming he was an endless reservoir of strength. He wasn't blaming them, not truly. He understood that his own patterns had created this dynamic. The responsibility for his own well-being, he realized with a jolt, lay squarely with him. This awakening was not comfortable. It was a chaotic, unsettling process, forcing him to confront the dis-ease within. The sudden bursts of irritability, the unexplained bouts of sadness, the growing detachment. These were the cries of a soul long neglected, demanding attention. It was the ego's carefully constructed facade beginning to crack, allowing the repressed contents of the unconscious to seep into his awareness. How many times had he suppressed his own frustration, his own exhaustion, simply to maintain the peace, to be seen as the dependable one? The realization that his quiet withdrawal and irritability were not character flaws, but rather the desperate signals of an overextended nervous system and an unacknowledged psyche, was both terrifying and liberating. It meant he wasn't broken, he was simply depleted. It meant he had to learn a new way of being, a way that honored his own limits and needs as much as he honored the needs of others. The weight of his own ignored truth was beginning to crush him, forcing a reevaluation of everything he thought he knew about strength, about love, and about self. Elias's journey into unexpected irritability and emotional detachment perfectly illustrates the pitfalls of an imbalanced approach to the self, particularly when the animus/animus aspects, representing the contrasexual soul image, are neglected. For a man like Elias, the continual suppression of his emotional landscape and nurturing instincts for himself, in favor of external strength, leads to a distortion where his unacknowledged internal needs manifest externally in disruptive ways. Sigmund Freud's concept of the unconscious provides a powerful lens through which to understand Elias's situation. His repressed feelings and unmet needs, long buried, finally found an outlet, albeit an uncomfortable one. This emotional backlash is a clear signal that the psychic system is under duress, crying out for balance and integration. For you, if you find yourself experiencing similar unexplained irritability or a growing sense of detachment, consider it a vital message from your inner self. It is an invitation to engage in shadow work, to delve into those parts of yourself that you have consciously or unconsciously repressed. What emotions have you deemed unacceptable to feel? What needs have you consistently pushed aside to maintain an external image? The solution lies not in battling these uncomfortable feelings, but in listening to them. Acknowledge the irritation, the fatigue, the silent yearning. Allow yourself to feel it without judgment. This is the first step towards healing pain and fostering a deeper sense of self-worth. Begin to set small, manageable boundaries in your life. Say no to an extra task. Carve out moments of solitude. Delegate responsibilities you've habitually taken on. Remember, true strength is not the absence of vulnerability, but the courage to acknowledge it. What uncomfortable truth about your own limits are you ready to listen to today? We have journeyed with Elias through the subtle erosion of his self and the turbulent awakening of his neglected needs, marked by unsettling irritability. Now we arrive at the precipice of profound change. What happens when the hero, having faced the uncomfortable truths within, dares to actively reclaim his forgotten self? This final chapter explores the transformative power of self-reclamation, the courage it takes to dismantle old patterns, and the serene strength found in embracing one's authentic needs. It is the story of rebuilding, not from external expectations, but from the rich soil of inner wisdom. Man becomes whole, integrated, and individuated by having faced his shadow. This timeless wisdom from Carl Jung serves as the guiding principle for Elias's next steps. The irritability, the detachment, these weren't weaknesses, but rather the insistent whispers of his shadow, beckoning him towards integration. He realized that true strength wasn't about never feeling overwhelmed, but about acknowledging that feeling and responding to it with self-compassion. Elias began with small, deliberate acts of defiance against his long-standing patterns. He started declining extra projects at work that weren't essential, politely but firmly stating his capacity. The initial discomfort was palpable, a phantom sensation of letting someone down. Yet, as he held firm, he noticed something surprising. The world didn't crumble. Colleagues found other solutions, and in some cases, even expressed admiration for his newfound boundaries. This was a crucial lesson in Albert Bandura's concept of self-efficacy. By successfully navigating these small challenges, Elias built confidence in his ability to manage his own life on his own terms. His conversations with Sarah shifted. He began to express his own fatigue, his own need for space. It was awkward at first, a clumsy dance of unfamiliar vulnerability. "Sarah," he confessed one evening, "I've realized I've been trying to carry too much, and I haven't been fair to myself or to you by pretending I'm endlessly strong. I need to take some time for me." Sarah, initially taken aback, eventually responded with a mixture of surprise and genuine concern. She admitted she had always seen him as invincible and hadn't truly considered the toll his strength took. This open communication, born of Elias's newfound courage, began to forge a deeper, more authentic connection between them. It was a step towards true emotional reciprocity, moving beyond the one-sided dynamic that had quietly burdened their relationship. One morning, Elias woke with a profound sense of clarity. He remembered his old dream of traveling, of exploring ancient ruins and vibrant cultures. It had been buried under layers of responsibility and the constant demands of others. He decided, then and there, to book a solo trip. It wasn't a grand, month-long expedition, but a week-long journey to the quiet, rugged coast of Ireland, a place he had always dreamed of visiting. The thought of it filled him with a quiet thrill, a sense of anticipation he hadn't felt in years. On the cliffs of Maher, with the wild Atlantic wind whipping around him, Elias felt a profound sense of release. There was no one to fix, no one to reassure, no one to be strong for. He was simply present, a small yet significant part of the vast ancient landscape. He picked up his neglected sketchbook and began to draw, not the meticulous blueprints of buildings, but the organic, untamed lines of the crashing waves and the soaring gulls. Each stroke was an act of reconnection, a reclaiming of a part of himself he had put aside. This was William James's emphasis on the stream of consciousness in action, the pure, unfiltered experience of his own being, unburdened by external roles. He spent hours walking, meditating on the vastness of the ocean, allowing the quiet power of nature to soothe his weary soul. He recognized the whispers of stoicism in the unwavering cliffs, the resilience in the face of relentless winds. He began to understand that true inner peace wasn't about controlling external circumstances, but about mastering his internal landscape, his reactions, and his focus. He wasn't running from his responsibilities, but rather recentering himself so he could approach them with renewed energy and a healthier perspective. He found moments of profound stillness, a sense of inner rebirth that permeated his very cells. Upon his return, the changes in Elias were subtle but profound. He was still dependable, still caring, but there was a new lightness in his step, a quiet determination in his eyes. He continued to set boundaries, to prioritize his own well-being. He dedicated specific time each week to his creative pursuits, sketching, reading, exploring new interests. He discovered the profound joy of simply being, rather than perpetually doing for others. He still loved Sarah deeply, but their relationship had transformed, evolving into a more equitable partnership where both individuals nurtured their own growth while supporting each other. He recognized that his previous pattern of relentless giving was, in a way, a form of self-sabotage, a fear of confronting his own inner world. By becoming indispensable, he had inadvertently trapped himself in a cycle of depletion. Now, he understood that authentic connection stemmed from wholeness, not from martyrdom. He learned that saying no to something that drains you is saying yes to your own vitality, your own purpose, and ultimately, your greater capacity to contribute to the world from a place of genuine abundance. Elias's journey culminates in a powerful testament to the principles of individuation and the transformative potential of self-worth. He moved beyond the pervasive need for external validation, recognizing that his inherent value was not contingent upon his capacity to serve others. This echoes Carl Rogers's emphasis on unconditional positive regard, which Elias finally extended to himself. The internal power he accessed, the deliberate acts of self-care like walking, meditating, and drawing, are not mere hobbies. They are vital practices for healing pain and fostering genuine psychological integration. They are the pathways to transforming negative thought patterns into a positive and optimistic outlook. You, too, possess this profound capacity for inner rebirth. If Elias's story resonates, if you have felt the quiet ache of being strong for everyone but forgetting yourself, know that your journey towards wholeness begins now. Dare to listen to the whispers of your own soul. What forgotten dreams are waiting to be resurrected? What boundaries are yearning to be established? Embrace the power of stillness, the courage to say no when necessary, and the profound liberation found in prioritizing your own well-being. Your inner strength is not an endless resource to be exploited, but a precious flame to be nurtured. When you nourish your own spirit, you not only empower yourself but also radiate a more authentic, sustainable light into the world. If you found this story compelling, or see yourself reflected in Elias's journey, please leave a like, subscribe, and comment to let our channel feel from you. And if you know someone who needs to hear this message, please share this video as a necessary lifeline. Thanks for watching. The end.